This is unbelievable story. A 50-year-old woman forced her houseboy to do this hard. A true infidelity story. Before start the story, please subscribe me for more. The mansion seemed to breathe in the night, each shadow stretching like fingers over the cold stone floors. I was 14 and desperate, the kind of desperate that makes you say yes to places like this, a crumbling, lonely estate where even whispers felt unwelcome. My employer, a woman with sad, piercing eyes and a constant, almost unnatural pain, hired me for simple tasks. But nothing about that house or the work stayed simple for long. Late one night, she called me into her room. The air felt heavier there, like something unseen was coiled in the dark corners, waiting. She asked me to massage her back, explaining with a thin, tired smile that her pain had grown worse. Her words hinted at more than a physical ailment. Her eyes told a story her lips wouldn't share. And as I pressed my hands gently into her tense shoulders, she began to talk in a low voice, a hint of fear woven into every word. "Do you ever feel as if someone is watching you?" she asked. The question hung in the silence, as chilling as the midnight air, and I felt a prickling down my spine. I was just 14 when I started working at my employer's house, a grand, old mansion with towering walls and rooms that echoed even the slightest whisper. The place had a strange, eerie silence that felt almost heavy, but I had no choice. My family was struggling, and this job was our only hope. My employer was a woman in her mid-40s, with a stern but gentle face. She hired me to do basic cleaning and some odd jobs, offering me a daily wage of 50 rupees. At first, it seemed simple enough: sweep the floors, dust the shelves, and wash the dishes. But over time, she started assigning me other tasks. One day, she called me into her room, a vast, dimly lit space filled with antique furniture that seemed to have stories of their own. She asked me to massage her back. She explained, almost apologetically, that she suffered from a painful condition that kept her awake at night. Her voice was soft, yet her eyes were intense, as though holding back a deeper pain. I felt awkward and unsure, but I remembered my father's advice, to work hard and be grateful for the opportunity. He had told me to never refuse a task, as she had been kind enough to hire me when no one else would. As days turned into weeks, the tasks grew stranger. She would call me into her room at odd hours, even past midnight, asking me to massage her back or apply ointments. Sometimes, she would stare off into the distance, her eyes dark and haunted, as if lost in memories she couldn't escape. She rarely spoke about her past, but I couldn't shake the feeling that her pain went beyond physical ailments. One night, while massaging her back, she told me about a tragedy that had happened in the house years ago. She spoke in a low, almost whispering tone, her voice trembling slightly as if sharing a dark secret. Her husband had died mysteriously in that very room, and ever since, she had suffered from unrelenting back pain. She believed the pain was a curse, something left behind from his restless spirit. Her words sent a chill down my spine, but I tried to focus on my work, not letting my mind wander. Despite my unease, I continued with my duties. She paid me more as the weeks went by, 100 rupees, then 200, and eventually 400 a day. Sometimes, she would give me an additional 150 rupees, whispering, "Keep it for yourself." I felt grateful, yet a part of me wondered why she was being so generous. She even encouraged me to study, something my family could never afford on our own. Her kindness was a strange contrast to the somber air in the house and the unsettling stories she told me. One evening, as I was about to leave, she called me back, her voice softer than usual. She seemed unusually vulnerable, and for the first time, I felt genuine sympathy for her. She told me how the pain had grown worse and that she often felt a presence in her room, especially at night. She confided in me that her health had deteriorated because she could no longer sleep. The nurses she had hired had left abruptly, refusing to stay overnight. They said they saw things, she murmured, her voice barely audible. That night, as I lay in my small bed, I couldn't sleep. The shadows in my room seemed to move, as if mirroring the gloom of her mansion. I couldn't shake the feeling that her pain was somehow connected to something deeper, something lurking in the corners of that old house. The next day, I decided to ask her directly about the strange occurrences. She looked at me with a mix of sadness and fear, as if she had been dreading this conversation. She admitted that her husband's death had never been fully explained. Some said he had fallen. Others whispered that it had been something more sinister. She believed he was still there, watching her, angry and vengeful. I didn't know what to say. I felt trapped between compassion for her suffering and a growing fear of the unknown forces that seemed to linger in the house. Days passed, and each time I entered her room, the air felt heavier, almost suffocating. The shadows seemed darker, as if hiding something just out of sight. One night, as I massaged her back, she suddenly grabbed my hand, her grip cold and firm. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Promise me you'll stay with me," she pleaded, her eyes wide and filled with terror. I nodded, unable to speak, feeling a chill run down my spine. That night, I left her room but couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching me as I walked down the dimly lit hallway. The next day, I returned to find her bed empty. The room was cold, and the curtains were drawn tightly, blocking out the morning light. Her absence felt ominous, as if the house itself had swallowed her whole.